Alrighty, I just want to say the bags right there, it's what we call them is our swag bag. So we give them to all our new members. So whoever joined our employee resource group, we send them that gift bag. So that is for you to keep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. And I just want to say, Nyajong, Shada, hello, everyone. My name is Song Bang. I am the cosmetic manager at the Reconditioning Center and the president of our employee resource group, the Asian Hmong Alliance.
Hello, everyone. My name is Reggie Pfeiffer. I work in the accounting department for the Walser corporate office. I'm also on the board of our Asian Hmong Alliance Employee Resource Group.
And I'm going to reference the Hmong National Development Conference because that just happened a few weeks ago. So we were at HNDC and you know, some of the items that we pass out, they have Asian Hmong Alliance on it. Some of them have AHA. So one of the attendees came up and said to me, what is AHA? So I said, it's the acronym for Asian Hmong Alliance. And then I said, you know, it's when you come up with a bright idea, something just clicked and you said, aha.
Yep.
But in all seriousness, so the Asian Hmong Alliance, we are one of 4 employee resource group here at Walser. And most importantly, you know, these groups, our employee resource group here, are employee-led, employee-driven, and we are also we do have a full operating budget too. And that's why events like this today can happen. So before we begin, I want to thank everyone that really truly made this happen. So I want to thank Andrew Walser and the Walser Automotive Group, you know, a company that really sees its employees. And then I want to thank all of the Hmong veterans and all the military nurses. Hmong American Day is your day. So thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice, and it'll never be forgotten. And I want to ask, do we have any military Hmong veterans and military nurses in here today? Dad, that includes you. So if you are, please stand up. Yeah, please stand up. Yeah.
Yay. I can show you.
Thank you.
We also want to give a big thank you to all the general managers at our stores and the reconditioning center for their support. A special thank you to Greg Davis, who's the general manager here at Walser Toyota Bloomington. He's continually supported AHA and our ideas, including today's panel discussion and the Threads of Tradition clothing display that we all saw downstairs. A thank you to Bee Vang Mua for sharing her Threads of Tradition collection of Hmong clothing at our dealerships throughout the month of May. Thank you to everyone on the AHA team, Stephen, Essence, Mua, Burr, John, Kirsten, Dana, and Isaac.
If you can just stand up real quick for us. Thank you.
Thank you to past AHA board members who gathered on Sundays to help get ERG work done, including late night texting to find solutions. So many late night texts. ERG work is work. When running an ERG, one learns quickly that ERG work and long nights are synonymous with each other. Thank you to all of our support teams that work behind the scenes, communications, marketing, accounting, and so many more. AHA would not be here without their time and their efforts. And lastly, we want to thank our esteemed guests for their time today. So without further ado, let's introduce them. Very technical difficulties. First, I'd like to introduce Li Paozhong. He is currently the founding director of the Center for Hmong and East Asian Studies and professor of American Government Political Science, as well as Hmong history, culture, and language at Concordia University, St. Paul. Throughout his distinguished career, Zhang served as the Director of Housing Policy and Development for the City of Minneapolis, President and CEO of the Urban Coalition, Executive Director of the State Council on Asian Pacific Minnesota, Hmong American Partnership, and the Hmong of Minnesota State Senator, and the Hmong Youth Association of Minnesota. He has also previously served on the staff of Minnesota State Senator Joe Bertram, United States Senator Carl Levin of Michigan and Washington, D.C., and was an appointee of President William Jefferson Clinton and Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura. Li Pao received his Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science from the University of Minnesota and his Master of Arts degree in Public Administration from Hamline University. He completed his doctorate in Public Administration coursework, also at Hamline University. Next, we have Mayor, also Mein Za Tao, who is the president and CEO of the Hmong American Partnership, the largest Hmong-led nonprofit in the United States and Minnesota, and its national subsidiary, Hmong National Development Incorporated. She has dedicated her career to elevating the visibility of the Hmong people, Southeast Asian and immigrant refugee communities in the Midwest, and now nationally with a strong focus on economic and community development, housing, and bridge building across sectors. Previously, she served as Assistant Deputy Director for the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, where she spearheaded economic development and DEI initiatives. Before that, she revitalized the Hmong Wisconsin chapter of Commerce, transforming it into a key player in economic development by deploying over $2 million in microloans and leveraging $10 million in community financing for diverse businesses. Her leadership and commitment to community impact have earned her numerous accolades, including the Milwaukee Business Journal Woman of Influence in Public Policy, the Governor's Community and Economic Development Award, and the Small Business Administration Wisconsin Minority Business Champion Award.
Can we just give a round of applause real quick for Li Pao and Mein Za? Wow. Yeah. And then, Mei Li? Real quick, I have a really, thank you, Mei Li. Thank you. Just like, I go way back, and so thank you. So, Mei Li, she is a passionate educator who believes that students learn better and they can be their full selves in the classroom. She is the principal of Tuiki Hmong Language and Culture Lower Campus in St. Paul Public School, one of the first schools in the nation to have a Hmong immersion program. Prior to being a principal, she has been a longtime teacher, coach, program coordinator at the school, and in 2024, she was elected as a Bush Fellow. Thank you. Yes. Bo Hyung. So Bo is the Director of Public Relations and Issue Management at Medtronic, a global leader in healthcare technology. With a sharp eye for strategy and a deep commitment to impactful storytelling, she leads high-stakes communication efforts to help grow the business and protect brand reputation on a global scale. Before transitioning to a corporate communication, Bo built a dynamic career in broadcast journalism, spending nearly a decade in television newsrooms where she covered breaking news and education. Her work earned top industry honors, including Upper Midwest Emmy and the Edward R. Murrow Award. Born in a refugee camp in Thailand and raised in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Bo's journey fueled her passion for story and community connection. She is a dedicated mentor to first-generation and underserved students, inspiring the next generation of communicators to find and own their voice. Let's give them an applause too.
Today, we recognize Hmong Day, a time to honor the resilience, culture, and contributions of the Hmong community. To begin our conversation, Can each of you share what Hmong Day means to you personally?
Well, I think today, well, first of all, thank you for hosting us and inviting us to be part of this wonderful day. And thank you for everyone for being here. And then our people who are watching through social media. That's nice. Today, I think it's it's a day, I think, celebration as well as a day of remembrance. And today was the last day of the evacuation of the Hmong from the country of Laos, airlift, that is. And so at about 11 o'clock today, General Pao left the country of Laos and to Thailand. And as a result, that ended all evacuation of the Hmong. So it's a day for us to remember those who made it and those who didn't make it out of during that evacuation. Only 1,700 people evacuated out of Laos, and the rest had to trek across the jungle and cross the Mekong River into Thailand. The other day, I think it's also an important day because if it weren't for our engagement, we wouldn't be here in America, right? So we wouldn't have the kind of success that we're seeing now with the Hmong community. So it could be both ways, right? But I think, again, on the positive side, it's wonderful. And thanks the hospitality of the United States of America for opening its door to bring the Hmong here. And by coming here, we jumped over 100 years ahead of our time. Otherwise, we'll still be in the jungle of Laos in the mountain village somewhere. And so it's a bittersweet day, but also a very important day for the Hmong community, at least for me.
Hmong Day to me is everything that Lee Pao said, and it's so great to have a historian on the panel who can really set the context. For me this year, it's got a very different feel. I just got done last night reviewing about 14 youth essays from Oklahoma, Hmong American youth, and their essays were around what Hmong Veterans Day actually means to them. And these were youth from, there were two age groups, 10 to 15 and then 16 to 21. But there is, this year, what's different for me is the urgency behind making sure we remember our history and our legacy. And it was so wonderful to read these essays last night and to just know that our young folks, our young people do still know our history. They may not remember as much as some of us who grew up with refugee parents or some of us who were actual refugees themselves, but to know that our young folks still remember and that we have a responsibility to really make sure that history does not get erased. And to me personally, again, this year is just that urgency of making sure we don't lose that history. And then really significantly, more so for Mei Li and those who are in this space, but making sure we don't lose our language. I remember years ago, I was speaking with a Native American colleague, and she was just talking about reflecting on how our Native communities have lost their language. And we talked about the significance of our Native languages and like how much that like makes up our identities. And I look at my two children who are in high school and they don't have the language anymore. And it hurts me because I'm like, there are so many things I cannot say in English that you can only say in Hmong. And it's such a deep connection to who you are. And so that's kind of what Hmong Day means to me this year.
Thanks, Teresa. For me, I guess Hmong American Day. It's funny because we lived here before we ever designated a Hmong American Day, right? So I've been kind of thinking about like before Hmong American Day, we didn't have those. It was just a part of who we were. Our parents reminded us all the time of how lucky we were, right, to be here in America and kind of the struggles. But what I now acknowledge about recognizing and dedicating a day to acknowledge that as Hmong American Day is really important because it is a day of remembrance, like Lee Powell said, and honoring our parents and all of our parents, grandparents, ancestors, all the people whose shoulders we stand on, all of the sacrifices they gave and their will to survive through all of that so that, like Lee Powell and Teresa alluded to, we can have the opportunities we do. So for me personally, especially with this 50-year celebration and recognition of 50 years of the Hmong being in America after that last evacuation, one of the big things that I really resonates with me is so when I was little, I started school in kindergarten, but a big thing for me was birthdays, right? Like birthdays are a big deal for little kids. So when we were in school, our parents, or our teachers like, when's your birthday? When's your birthday? I didn't know. So I went home like, Mom, when's my birthday, right? My mom's like, I don't know, what's a birthday, right? And I'm like, but Mom, when was I born, right? She's like, oh, I remember when you were born, right? So she didn't know birthday, but she clearly remembered when I was born. So she said, you were born when the war just ended. I was carrying you in my, I was carrying you, and it was 1975. It was the year that the war ended and we had to leave. And all through the jungles as we were running, and I'm number 9 of 11 children. So it was me and all my little brothers and sisters, and we were running through. And right when we were on the border of Laos and Thailand, where the Mekong River was, and we were going to cross, that's when I had you. And you were 9 days old when we had to cross the Mekong River. And I didn't know if you and I were gonna live or die and who was gonna come with us, but we made it, and that's your birthday. And I was like, okay, Mom. I didn't know what to tell my teacher, right? So that was my birthday. But, as a little kid, I didn't understand the significance of that. But now, as an adult and as I got older, like, what a special moment in time. And like my mom said, I clearly remember when you were born. And so I just shared this story with my kiddos last week at my school because we had our Hmong American Day celebration. And one of my 4th graders looked up at me and said, oh, Principal Zhang, that's so special that you share your birthday with the 50 years of Hmong people in America. And so for me, with Hmong American Day, as we remember the sacrifices and the journey and the the tenacity to survive and move on and make the best of it. I remember that. And so I feel very lucky. And my mom's always like, make it count. We made it for a reason when so many people perished, and you and I have to make it count. And so for me, Hmong American Day, that's what it means.
That's going to be a very hard follow to all these 3. But I thought a lot about like what this day means to me, and I'll share a little story. My dad called me a couple weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago. He's getting old, and this was an unexpected phone call. You never know how these will go. But he's like, hey, Bua. I'm like, yes. He's like, 37 years ago today, we came to America. The fact that he remembers that April 2nd is the day his life changed and my life changed, and you could hear in his voice that this day is seared in his mind. There was sadness because he's the only one of his family that came over, so he spent the last nearly 4 decades away from them, raising his children in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, very far away from Laos. But there was a lot of hope in his voice in that, in the 8 children he was able to raise in this country, all of them have gone on to be pretty decent people, giving back to their community. So to me, Hmong Day is about mourning the life that could have been for them and for us, but also honoring the resilience of our community, our parents, our people, to be able to say this was not our choice, but we can build goodness out of. So that's what Hmong Day means to me. It's just this duality of sadness, but also in a weird way, joy and resilience that has come out of that because was the only choice we had.
So first question here is for Mainza. And when I was looking through the questions here that we wrote, I was like, I know this one was this is from Mainza. So how has your Hmong identity shaped the way you show up in your personal and professional life?
Thanks, Song. And I want to just quickly go back. You all might have heard Mei Lee reference me as Teresa. That dates us. That dates our friendship. No. And it is all good because this is part of my response to that. I grew up, my mom is a stout Catholic. She came to this country as a Catholic, and so resourceful. When she came and my parents came over, I actually was the firstborn here in this country, shortly after they moved to, or didn't move here, but came here as refugees. But because she's such a stout Catholic, she found a Catholic church. And so we were all raised in a Catholic church, all 9 of us. We had 9, Maylee's family had 11. And we were baptized and given Catholic baptismal names. Teresa is mine. So Maylee and I go way back. Our families go way back. But how has my Hmong identity shaped me? It goes all the way back to then. To as soon as my family came to this country, we were born, my younger siblings and I were born. It was understanding that there were things we had to kind of change, including our names, to make life easier, not just for our American friends, but for us as kids. And for my family, my parents to understand that if I went by Teresa, it was going to be easier for my teachers versus Mainza, which I now go by. Mainza is my actual name, given name by my parents, my legal name. Teresa was just my baptismal name that I grew up using all throughout my childhood, high school, and then early college years. But I remember growing up because my mom was so resourceful. We were kind of the charity case in private Catholic schools. And of course, I was with white middle-class students and families who had, some affluency. And my friends, many of them had cabins up north. So during the summer break, it's like, Teresa, do you want to go to the cabin with us? And I just remember this fire in my belly, like my parents don't even own a home, much less own a cabin, a second home somewhere else. And understanding that I was different because I was Hmong and my parents were refugees, that we lived in public housing and then affordable housing. That just changed my life. And that was when I was in a 3rd grader. I remember that day distinctly, like, that makes no sense to me. And it felt so unfair. Like, how is that even possible? And so the shaping of my identity has truly come from my Hmong and refugee background and my family's background and how we had to grow up here in this country, how my parents had to fight to survive as janitors, as cafeteria folks, just to give us a good life here. And then as I went through the Catholic private school systems, I moved into public high school where I met great friends like Mei Lee. And that's where I remember a very distinct moment in 8th grade. I was given my 8th grade teacher pulled me out of class and said, hey, Cretin Hall, if those of you who are in the St. Paul area, if you know Cretin, it's a very, very prestigious Catholic private high school. Cretin Hall would like to give you a full ride for high school. As an 8th grader, I said to my 8th grade teacher, no, I want to go to a public high school so I can make Hmong friends. And I didn't even consult with my family, my parents, or my older siblings. But I just knew something was missing in my life because I grew up with so many non-Hmong people. But we would still go to the New Year, July 4th. So there were very significant moments in my developmental years that reminded me I am still Hmong. And to this day, that's why I continue to work in my community in the nonprofit sector. But because I feel like I have something to give back and that I should give back, because I have gained not just technical skills, but a network that and influence to some extent that I could help drive some movement in my community to improve the lives of our community. And so truly the Hmong identity has just been a part of who I am and drives everything that I do in my personal and in my work life.
All right, next question is for Lee Powell. Can you share a time when you felt especially proud or especially challenged because of your cultural background?
Well, that's a tough question. I would go back to my work in Washington, D.C. in 1988 with United States Senator Carl Levin of Michigan. I think that kind of opened my eyes on things. Here I was working with the senator, working on projects like freeing Nelson Mandela from South Africa, writing letters to corporations and trying to boycott corporations from doing work with South Africa. And so I was sitting there one day, I'm like, why am I the only Hmong person in Washington, D.C. at that time, at this time? And this is the most powerful place in the world and the most powerful country, right? So I kind of sat there and said, what gave me the opportunity, felt privileged to be given the opportunity to do this kind of work. But also, trying to get my community to understand the power of policies and politics. And coming back and say, wow, you can do all of this stuff, and really pushing even policymakers to I remember having a conversation with the senator about granting veterans benefits to Hmong veterans. This was in '88. And he said, well, we can't do that because we are involved in too many places and too many things in the world. And yet, whenever I fill out an application for a job or fill out an application for a scholarship, they always ask me, are you a child of a veterans? So I was conflicted. I was like, yes, I am. But how come I'm not either, because you're not acknowledging my community. And so I think that's one of the biggest, thing that kind of stopped me from like, what can I do, right? What can I do, and how can I move this forward? And so, just this year, I decided I wrote this bill to grant limited benefits to veterans in Minnesota. And hopefully it'll pass. It's in conference committee now. And so it's a way for us for my generation, for me to deal with after all these years of helping the younger generations when you fill out the application for scholarship, application to go to college, or application for a job, that you can actually mark down, yes, I am a child of a veterans. So I think that's both positive and negative, but it's always a challenge for me each time I look at an application and they ask me that question. Did I answer the right question?
Okay. The next question is for Boa. So how do you stay connected to your Hmong heritage while navigating spaces that may not always reflect your culture?
You guys ask hard questions around here at Walser. For a long time, I felt like I had to choose whether I was Hmong or whether I was an American. And that struggle probably stayed with me through college and even to my first professional career. And the way I've evolved my thinking is I am just me. My identity enhances my perspective, but it does not define me. It does not box me. So the way I've thought about it is because I've also, in some jobs that I've had or interviews that I've had, it's very clear that I'm being interviewed because they want a Hmong person or an Asian person or a female. And I had to get clear about my values. I am not here to be a checkbox for your diversity quotas. I'm here because I'm smart, I'm talented, and I belong. So that's how I approach being able to be me, but also bring my cultural lens. My access to this shared history we all have, the cultural history that I have is really powerful, and you can only get it if you take me fully, not just because I can check off a DEI box for you. So a couple of ways this has showed up in my career is when I was at Care 11, at the time, there were only 2 Hmong people in this entire newsroom, and it's a newsroom of like 50 people. So there was me and another producer named Panya Yang. And now you can turn on the TV, and I'm so proud of how our media market has evolved. We see Gina Her, we see Gia Vang, we see Laura Lee. So I'm like, this was not here when I was here. And by God, am I old now that I can be like, this is amazing. And at the time I remember going into an editorial meeting. So this is the morning meeting where every reporter pitches their story. And that morning, there were 2 separate incidents that involved Hmong families. And it was very, like eerily very similar cases. So a young Hmong child found their parents' gun and used it to accidentally shoot a sibling. In one case, one of the siblings died. In another case, one of the siblings survived. We had a producer suggest, this must mean that Hmong people don't understand gun safety laws. We should do a story about the Hmong community not understanding gun safety laws. As a 24-year-old journalist who happens to be Hmong and happens to know this narrative is absolutely false, and you would never do this if it was a white person. You would never do this if it was another community. So having to speak up at 24 and say, actually, as a Hmong person, this is a completely false narrative. And so I felt really powerful in the moment to use my journalistic skills to be able to say, these are not facts. And then to be able to access my cultural heritage and say, based on what I know in the community that I live in and I'm a part of, this is not true. Same in Medtronic where I am now, where I get to work with some of the smartest doctors, researchers, scientists. We are building life-saving technology. But what's so interesting is I might not have the doctor background or the R&D expertise to build the next surgical tool to help make your surgery easier. But I do have access to saying, hey, in the community that I come from, there is no word for cancer. So the way you're describing how this product could help a patient isn't going to resonate with this customer base that you're trying to reach. So being able to access, again, the cultural knowledge that we have and bring it to the table to help make sure that whatever solution you're talking about is actually accessible to the people you want to help has been like my power move of how I can combine my day-to-day expertise with the beautiful cultural background that I have the privilege of being part of.
This next question is for Mei Lee. And this is perfect for you. Sounds like a really good question. What role does language, Hmong or otherwise, play in your sense of identity or connection to community?
Boy, these questions are, I know. I feel a little bit like I'm taking a test, but that's because I'm an educator. But actually, they're really great. Thank you. So as as the first school that offers a Hmong immersion program in the nation in St. Paul Public Schools, I feel like it has a huge piece to do with how we see ourselves, right? And I can say that because we came here, from my own personal experience, we came here when I was 4 in 1979. And at home, we always spoke Hmong. My parents spoke Hmong to us. It was a very normal thing, right? Your parents speak Hmong to you, they talk to you. And then when we started going to school, it was English. And so we're little, we don't know, we just speak whatever we speak because it's normal to us. And so I remember we were the first, like kind of the earlier waves. So there weren't a lot of other Hmong students yet in St. Paul. And so there were a few other kids. So every time I saw another Hmong kiddo, I would get really excited and I'd run over and I'd want to talk to them, like try to figure out what's going on. What's the teacher asking us to do? Like, what do you know? And I'd ask them in Hmong, right? Because that's what I know. And, you know, the first thing the teachers say, oh, don't speak that language. You have to learn to speak English now because you're in America, right? So as a little kid, you don't know. So you just kind of take it in, and you always want to please your teacher. So you try to do what your teacher asks. And so, you know, I think it's repeated experiences like that through the K-12 education, right? That although they uh, uh, don't tell you explicitly, like Hmong is not as valuable as English, you internalize it and you understand which language is more powerful, which language is better, who is smarter, you know. And so over the course of my educational career in St. Paul, my educational system in St. Paul public schools, you know, you learn to know that English is better than Hmong. Your teachers are smarter than your parents. You know, doing things at school is better than doing things at home. And so you internalize those. And so it has a huge impact on how I saw myself and how I valued my own culture and language. And so, yeah, by middle school, high school, you start to distance yourself from everything Hmong, right? And so I think and like to your point earlier, I'm so sorry, I didn't even catch that. We just go back and then your memory just goes back because we graduated from the same high school. I'm a little older, so I graduated before her, but it wasn't until later in high school when we started hanging out with other Hmong friends that we started to feel like, hey, it's okay to be normal. Like, this is okay for us to speak Hmong when we want to among ourselves. Like, and it became a source of strength and a source of pride. And it wasn't until I actually was older, like in college, that I really was okay with speaking Hmong, and I started to see the value of that. So then now as a teacher, you know, we think language is just language, but when you can't understand the people that you love the most, like when they're talking to you, it's deeper than just language. Like when your grandma tells you that they love you and you don't know that, or you can't share your most, you know, like how much you love your grandparents, that's breaking, that's like a, you know, it's not just a language that's lost, it's a whole relationship that's lost. It's a whole love that's lost with our parents and grandparents. So I think it's huge. And so I think language, like kind of what Mainza said earlier, language is huge in terms of our identity development, who we are, our sense of self, and who we value and who we love around us. And so, you know, in our public schools, I'm really happy that after 50 years, in America, it's interesting because we talked about how the Hmong started coming in 75. We were the first wave of English only, English only, English only. We've kind of gone through that phase, and now we have, like a lot of my brothers and sisters, their children don't speak Hmong anymore, right? Because they were the first wave when they were in high school and middle school, and they were really told like and shamed for speaking it. So they really they made a conscious choice to not teach their children Hmong, to not speak Hmong to their children. That was their conscious choice because of their early experiences. And so we have this generation of kids who really don't have that connection. And then now, when we started our immersion program in 2006 in St. Paul, and some of the parents who have lost it are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe in our pursuit of the American dream, in our pursuit of learning English, in our pursuit of making it, we look at what we've lost. And it's like we were so busy moving forward, like so many immigrant groups, that we didn't realize what was lost. And so I think now with this, you know, like realization, I think folks are wanting to have their children be able to speak it again because it gives them a different sense of self and a different strength. And I love your piece of roots and rising, because if we don't have our roots, we can't rise. And when we are rooted, we can rise as high as we want. And so I feel like it's so fitting. And so, yeah, language is a huge piece. And so now with our immersion programs, we try to foster that. So within my own family, right, we've got like 26 nieces and nephews, or my mom's grandchildren. And like the first wave of it, all my older nieces, they can't speak it. Hmong anymore. But then my two youngest ones, they were young enough to get enrolled in our immersion programs, and they're the only two that can understand grandma when she tells her stories. And so when I think about like the 50-year journey that we've kind of seen in America, I feel fortunate as an educator. I feel like I've kind of come full circle of when I started school, I was told you can't speak it. And now I get to be a principal at a school where like, we get to speak Hmong and sing in Hmong and that's great. So. And Song is an awesome volunteer at our school. I want to give shout out to Song. He used to teach or work at our school, elementary school on the east side of St. Paul, which is kind of the hub of the Hmong American community, and was so impactful. Worked with little first graders and got on the floor with them, like was working with them, and so now he comes back as a volunteer and works with our kids. And now, before our Song, when you were there, we didn't have our immersion program yet, did we? Or did we start it? We just started it, yeah. So it's great to see the growth of it. So hats off to a lot of our Walser employees here who are also volunteers.
Mainly, the next question is actually for you again. So, what inspired your career path and how has your cultural identity influenced your choices along the way?
Well, I think I shared a lot of stuff about my culture identity already, but I think for my career path, it was funny because I think as a little kid, you don't realize that you don't have a lot of exposure to different careers, right? You just live and you just are. And so like the people that I did know, surprisingly, like when we were little, like, what do you want to be, a nurse or a teacher? Because that's what I knew, because we could go to the doctor and see nurses and doctors. We go to school and we see teachers. That's what we know. Those were also careers that we were familiar with because back in Laos and Thailand, our parents knew those. They had teachers and there were nurses and medical people around. So those careers were careers I was familiar with. So I actually did not want to do that. I was like, I want to do something different. And so in high school, it was, science and math. Like, oh, I was told by my teacher, oh, you're good with science and math. You should do something in science and math. So I valued what my teacher said. So I said, that's right. I'm going to go do science and math. And so in college, I actually wanted to major in chemical engineering. And so all of my first 2 years, I was like all science and math courses. And then one summer they were advertising for an English teaching program in Thailand. And I had never been back to Thailand since coming here. And so I was like, oh, I want to go travel abroad. So I had signed up for it just so I could go abroad. And so what they did was they assigned me to like a high school English teacher. And I was supposed to help because I was a native English speaker. And so I spent a summer in Thailand doing that, and I just loved being with the students. And it just felt so natural to me of the teaching and being in front of them, and I just loved that. So after that, I came back and I told my advisor, I'm going to be a teacher. What do I need to do? And so I changed that trajectory overnight, and I haven't regretted it since. And so that was my career path. But now I see like, I didn't know a lot of careers that were out there. And I wonder if I had more exposure to different careers, what would I have chosen to, right? So I think about that all the time for our students who want to aspire to do other things, like how many things can we expose them to so they can see themselves and dream and go where they want to go.
If I would just like to go back and add a little bit about language, and it's a story that I want to share too, an experience. Back when I was in the finance industry, we were not allowed to speak any other language to our clients. And I was on the phone. I called this client, and they're Hmong, and it was I believe it's the mother that I was speaking to, and I was talking to her, and like. She was speaking Hmong to me. It's like, "Tu kaichio, uchipolumikao." So I'm like, I know I can answer that question, but I couldn't, and I just had to keep on speaking English to her. So finally, she just hung up on me. And that's, I mean, being in the industry really frustrated me, that I could not speak Hmong. Here, one of the employees, they couldn't speak English, so I got on the phone and we call HR, and there you go, I'm translating. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
But with that, Lee Paul, I'd like to ask you this question, because when I was thinking of this question here, I was like, growing up in the 70s and 80s here in America, my hero was the Lone Ranger.
Mm.
So with you, I'm like, oh, okay, Lee Paul. So who are the mentors and role models that you look up to on your journey here?
Wow. Batman. And the Three Stooges. No, I think that we grew up not having that many, and because we were the first wave and the first generations to have obtained to go into college, right? But I think one of the person that stood out for me was Dr. Young Dao. Right, I think every family, Dr. Young Dao was one of the first Hmong PhD in the world. And so everybody aspired to be the Dr. Young Dao. Right? Every family wants to have a doctor in there. Uh, and I think, I always say that's his greatest contribution is that because of his doctorate title, everybody wanted their children to be doctor. So for me, that's one of the person that really was stuck in my mind. When I went to University of Minnesota, he was also my advisor, and so he suggested I take all these political science courses. So I took some of the political science courses, and that's how I ended up in public policy arena more than anything. But he was always there guiding, right? Guiding and helping us to think about, our career path. The other person is, I think I would say it's my martial art instructor. I've studied martial art for 30 years, right? And after martial art practice every Friday night, we would go to his house and we talk about Hmong history and start collecting and archiving articles and so on and so forth. And so I've been hoarding ever since my high school days. So it's kind of interesting because he had this passion and his love for the community about the Hmong people, and so got that from him. But as far as education attainment, I got that from Dr. Yang Dao. And so yeah, those are the two that I would say stuck in my mind. And then I was always joking also that my uncle promised me that if I graduate from high school, from college, he will buy me a Trans Am. He still owes me a Trans Am. So that's my other motivation to finish. And that age, you kind of, age myself in the 80s. Trans Am was the kind of cool thing, dual car. And so, but it's always the family's always pushing. My parents, they never obtained a college education, but they always say, go to college, go to college, go to college. And then when we actually decide to go to college, it's the people at the Dr. Yang Dao that inspired us. Yeah.
Thank you. This next question is for Mainza. What does representation mean to you in the workplace, in leadership, or in media?
So thank you for this question. I was like, really? I'm just going to say it quite simply, everything. Especially for those of us who grew up without those role models that looks like to us. I'm not even talking Hmong, like Asian American, period, right? I mean, going to school in an almost all white school, that was tough, and not seeing anybody else. I had one Filipino American girl growing up in elementary. That was it. Going on to high school, finally we had Hmong friends. That was really cool. But no teachers. But we had amazing Hmong student leaders who were like, oh my God, we could do that too, right? We don't need to be all shy, because those of you who know our Hmong people were very shy. And then going on to college, and I was fortunate enough to have some Asian American faculty members who were part of the Asian American Studies movement from the West Coast and came to Minnesota. So I studied under them, was mentored by them, and that was an awakening to not just my Hmong American identity, but the Asian American identity. That could only happen if I had those Asian American professors in my life as a college student. I don't know where I would be if I never met those Asian American faculty members who just opened up my eyes to a bigger world than just being Hmong and then being American. And then going on into my career, I would say that I was one of the very few and first Hmong folks who entered into the world of economic development work. And it's almost like finance, like very financial type people, very white, very men dominant. And I remember starting out in that economic development world. I was and by this point I was living in Wisconsin. I had married my husband who was from there. Wisconsin's not as progressive as Minnesota. Very white, very male dominated. And then I was still young at the time. I was probably in my 30s. Older white male folks at that. And you're in this room of like a sea full of older white men who are very well versed in the world of finance and in economic development. And here you are, a young Asian Hmong woman. And I'm short. I count that as also, another level of, another barrier. But truly, when you're short, people don't see you as well. And so you have all these things against you, right? Stacked up against you. And it was pounding on doors just to get one little introduction made so that I could bring resources back to help my Hmong community doing economic development work in Wisconsin. That representation matters. The allies matter. Because if you don't have folks who care about your communities and who look like you can't move anything forward. I just think about our 1.5 generation folks like Li Pao, who they came here as kids, grew up really with nobody. I am at least a second generation, had these folks to look up to. I don't know how they did it. The resiliency, the resourcefulness, without having anybody who looked like us. And again, not even Asian, right? I don't know how they did it, but I can say that without having folks like Li Pao and even older sisters like Mei Li, even if it was just a year or two older, to say, hey, we can be bold, we can do this, but the pounding of doors still happens because we still don't have enough representation. And it's not about, to Bo's point, it's not about, just open the door because we're Asian or we're Hmong. No, we're just as smart. We're just as talented. And I just think about the trajectory of my career. In Wisconsin, I was the assistant deputy director for the state housing authority. That was historical for Wisconsin. And really, almost 50 years later, seriously, that's historical for an entire state to have a Hmong woman at that level of state leadership. That's just unacceptable to me. And that's what continues to drive me because I just know their representation is still not there because our talents, our skills are still being overlooked and our young folks are not getting exposed to different careers so that they can dream bigger as well. And so in a nutshell, it matters. Representation truly matters.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Bua. Are there cultural traditions or values you hope to pass down or uplift in your work or life?
I don't have kids yet. When I think about if I'm lucky enough to do so, and what complicates things is my husband is not of Hmong descent. So I will be raising these Hmong kids who are also Finnish and French and Japanese. So they'll have many cultures. But the one thing I want to take from our culture is this really strong sense of community that I see in our Hmong culture. You were just saying before, like we're building on the history of all of these folks here, all of you. And I love that no matter where we go, like I was just in Tokyo and they were like, you're Hmong. And I was like, are you Hmong? And there's just a sense of like, oh my, I have no idea who you are, but yes, come here, sister. But that sense of community, I think, is so special. And that's what I want my kids, my nephews, to always hold on to is no matter where you are in the world, whether or not you speak the language, you are Hmong, and this community was built for you, and you can take this community and the shared knowledge and take it into the whatever space you're in. That's what I hope to continue passing down through my family and through the work that I do.
The next question here, I would actually like to direct this to all the panelists. So how do you envision the future of the Hmong community? Socially, culturally, and professionally?
I'm going to pass it to the historian actually do it first. I need time to think about this.
I think for every community, I think it's important to continue to maintain our social culture capital, right? Continue to maintain that. Because if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, right? And so as a historian, I always say, even when we talk about language, if you lose your language, you lose your culture. You lose your culture, you lose your history. You lose your history, you lose your identity, right? So I think it's important to be very strong in that sense. The other piece is to be strong politically, right? And I think it's wonderful that we have about 30 or so Hmong elected officials in the country. And in Minnesota, 9 of the 10 AAPI legislators are actually Hmong. So hopefully, in the future, we'll have a Hmong mayor, a Hmong congressional member who happens to be Hmong, a mayor who happens to be Hmong, and a governor who happens to be Hmong. So I hope that way, then we won't be just knocking on doors. I think we've accomplished a great deal of things at the Capitol, benefiting the Hmong community because we have Hmong legislators at the Capitol. If we didn't have Hmong legislators advancing our Hmong Veterans Bill and negotiating with Department of Veterans Affairs and negotiating with their Republican colleagues, we wouldn't be where we are because we've tried this in 2013, didn't go anywhere, right? The other piece is I hope that, we will continue to expand economically, be strong economically. The Hmong buying power is over $2 billion. And so we have about 9,000 or so Hmong businesses. And just from a context, in 1979, when my family moved to Minnesota, we were buying groceries, Asian groceries, produce from a Thai lady who was selling out of her garage in Little Canada. And now, if you look at St. Paul, plenty of grocery stores. You got Hmong Village, Hmong Town Marketplace. Now we have Tua Xiong, who's the owner of Hmong Town Marketplace, buying Maplewood Mall. And so, again, I hope we will have more Maplewood Mall kind of concept out there as well. And not only just doing business, targeting the Hmong community, but I always say targeting the 7 million population of the state of Minnesota. And so that's what I hope we will continue to think, we will continue to dream, and we will continue to do. Those are my hopes and aspirations for our community.
I'm going to piggyback off of Lee Pao. It is definitely the socioeconomical capital that needs to keep being increased. And folks I work with in the nonprofit sector, they probably roll their eyes at me because I say this all the time. Like, we always say we're moving the needle. I am so tired of saying we're moving the needle. Like, can we really see real transformation happen? And for us, especially at HAP, and for our national subsidiary too, it's how do we keep driving economic prosperity forward? Because our Hmong community, a small percentage, is starting to now build wealth, a very small. But here in the Twin Cities, we are just a thriving community, the Hmong American community here. But we forget there are still many who are not thriving. That's why HAP is still around doing the work we do. And last year, as I was traveling the nation to get ready for our national conference that we just did a couple weeks ago, it broke my heart because I have taken it for granted living here in the Midwest, that we have been very fortunate. We have Hmong legislators, we have so many allies in our communities to help move our communities forward. But in other parts of the nation, like in North Carolina, even California, where we have the largest Hmong population, they don't have the resources. They do not have the allies. They do not have the infrastructure to support the Hmong community. And many of our communities are still living in poverty. They really are. Even here in the Twin Cities, they still are. Some of us think we've made it and we don't see those community members anymore, but they are still there. And so for me, it's all about how do we help move our communities forward towards building wealth? And then we're not stopping there. It's building generational wealth, because it is due to our socioeconomical statuses that we cannot move our communities forward. That's why we have health issues in our community. That's why we have homelessness in our communities. That's why we have unemployment and youth issues that continue to generation after generation. Now we've got huge issues around chemical abuse, mental health issues. All of that ties back to our socioeconomical statuses. And we have to really be intentional about driving wealth building and generational wealth building to break those cycles. Also, on a personal level for me, it's about, I would like to retire soon. I think I would like to. But I really go back to the feeling this sense of urgency now on making sure I do my part in helping others to get to where they need to be, so that we don't forget the legacy that we come from, the resiliency that is not just with our parents and grandparents, but from our ancestors. And so how do we help make sure that our younger folks, our younger generations are ready to take, hopefully, that some of the little things we've built and to build bigger and better and to dream again much bigger than the rest of us even had the capacity to.
I think for me, I see our Hmong American community as just such an integral part of Minnesota now, right? I think over the last 50 years, I feel so fortunate that in 1979, our family landed here, and then we've just lived here always, like we haven't moved anywhere. All 11 of us children. So I just feel like when I think about like what the Hmong community has added to Minnesota's history and just the Minnesota community, especially the Twin Cities area, we have just been become such like a natural part of our community. And I say that because I work on the east side every day, and I just love driving down the neighborhoods and like seeing people everywhere, walking around the park, going to Hmong Village, going to Maplewood Mall, going to the different stores and being able to see things that reflect me and having that be so normalized. Like when Mainza was talking about like, oh my gosh, when you're the only one in the room or in the shop or in the town, you really feel like everyone's looking at me, right? But when you just go down and you're just like everyone else, it's such a normalized reality and experience. And it just is, it's been a nice feel. So I feel like as we move forward into the next 50 years, I just really see us being a part of the fabric of Minnesota, whether it's through the legislature, whether it's through school leadership or, like corporations and we just are becoming a part of the Minnesota fabric. And I think that's a beautiful thing to celebrate. It was interesting because a few weeks ago, we did go to the Hmong National Development Conference, and I was just blown away because it is the 50th year celebration. So there are just a lot of people that were at the conference. And at my school, we've been doing this like who's who in the Hmong community because I want them to have like role models and heroes. So like my team and I at our school for our celebration, we started to think of like, oh, who are all the trailblazers in the Hmong American community so we can like make these posters and have this hall of greatness that our kids can walk through, right? So we started generating these and we started making these posters. And then when I was at H&D, I'm like, oh my God, all the people on our list are right in this room. I'm just gonna go around and talk to all these people. But I was just amazed at like all the people that have done really incredible things and helped blaze the trail for us. And, you know, it was funny because there was a group of friends of us that grew up together. And now everyone's like leading their own organization. But we were talking, we're like, wow, you guys, when we were little, we were all in the projects. Like we all grew up in the projects. Our parents didn't speak English. We played in the dirt in the summertime. We ran around barefoot. And you're the president and CEO of Happen. You're the, you know, and it was like, and look at where we've come. And so when I think about like, how a bunch of little kids in the projects are now like making these important decisions or are in the state legislature and are doing these things, it brought a big sense of pride too. And I think about my kids too, my students every day. And I think about what will their impact be starting off on, you know, a school on the east side, 80% free and reduced lunch. You know, what can we foster so that they can be a contributing citizen to Minnesota and make Minnesota great and add new things and be innovative and be making important decisions and helping other communities. And so I think about Minnesota, how it's so friendly to a lot of immigrant communities and how we work and collaborate with other immigrant communities as well to lift all of our communities up. Right. So I see in the future, like how we collaborate with all of our fellow Minnesotans and how do we work within all of our communities and work alongside, support, and lift everyone up.
I'll keep this short because I know we're at time, but just bringing it back to what happened 50 years ago today as Leap Boss started us. That part of our story, we did not write. We did not want to participate in a war. We did not want to leave our country. So my hope for our community going forward is that we continue to write our own story instead of having others write our story for us.
Thank you. At this time, I know we're short on time too, but I'd like to open up to Q&A from the attendees, if anyone has one.
Oh, thank you all for being here. Quick question that feels unavoidable, and I promise I don't want to make it political at all, but given where we're at right now, with the status of, you know, refugees and what our country is pivoting, you know, in a different direction, but being 50 years removed from a very fateful decision that was made to bring in all of this wonderful culture that we've never had before, what sort of lessons can we take from that going forward as we think about other groups that might be looking for that kind of access?
You guys at Walser ask really tough questions, for real. I'll just say quickly from my perspective, as I was one when we came to the States. My parents have never been more proud of being Americans. And I feel like refugees actually love this country in a way that I don't think people who are born here actually appreciate. When my parents became US citizens for the first time, being able to witness them stand up, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and hold the American flag, that was so incredibly beautiful. So I think if you look at how refugees love this country, it is so deep. And they are like, the gratefulness is, trying to like get my train of thought here. The gratefulness they have for the opportunities is like immeasurable. So the conversation we're having about refugees right now, I think, is actually the opposite of how refugees would say how much they love this country and they love being Americans. I'm sure you guys have much more to add.
Definitely in the nonprofit world, we talk about this all the time recently, and it's a very heavy subject. I would say that this is also the time that all of us need to stand. We need to take a stance. Do it smart, but do it unapologetically. I understand that we all have to protect our organizations, whatever companies that we're a part of. But we all know, we all came from somewhere into this country. And I even see this in our Hmong community, within my own family. It's so sad to say, like, we have forgotten how we came to be here. And we're looking at other immigrant groups, again, within my own family, like, well, they're like this and like that. Why would we help them? And I'm like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? So let's just take that step back to remember where we came from, all of us, whether it was just 50 years ago, generations, decades ago, and take a stand. The other thing is be so well informed. And this is, one of my biggest concerns for much more vulnerable communities. Be so informed on a political level. How is this going to impact me? And maybe individually, especially our elders, they may not understand, but those of us who have the capacity to understand and to learn how these policies and these EOs and everything that's coming down the pike, how are they going to impact us as community members, and what are we going to do about it? Because we all have some influence and some power to do something. And so truly, the question comes back to, what are each of us going to do about it? And how do we take our stance in a powerful but smart way so that we don't end up jeopardizing each other as well?
Yeah, let me say this. The policies are in place right now. If they were in place back then, none of us would be here. So, and even the chain migrations, immigration, all of that, many of us would not be here. And so it's very disheartening to have, not to be political, but be political. We eliminated the refugee program. We eliminated the Office of Refugee Resettlement, basically in Washington, D.C. And yet the president just announced a refugee program for white South African, to come to the United States. And yet we have other people who are suffering, who are actually would fit into the real definitions of refugee, and they're not being allowed to come to America. So I think that we are living in a very interesting time, and this is a very interesting conversation for political scientists, for us to teach a lot of good examples to use. So I hope that, again, people come to America. The Hmong didn't want to come to America, okay? We have no idea what the concept of America is, okay? So we're different from an immigrant. Immigrants, while they were in their home country, they dreamt about coming to America, what they're gonna do once they reach the shores of America. And so when they come, they're only reuniting their mind with their body. Refugees, we have no idea what America is. We heard about America through the moon landing, the Apollo. Okay, and that's the only concept of America, and the singing songs, "Good Morning America," and all that stuff. That's it. My family, our name came up to come to America 3 times. We decided not to come. At first we said, we don't want to go, we don't want to go. Finally, my parents took risks and came to America, which is the clothes on our back. And so I think that, we need to really be mindful and conscious of the fact, like Manzo say, how we ended up in America, all of us, how we ended up in America, and be informed and be vocal. I don't know, this is the conversation when we talk about DEI stuff. And I really applaud Walser for continuing to focus, maintaining your DEI initiative. Why is it that only minority people, why are we always defending our positions? We need allies like yourself to speak out, right? To speak out, to say it, and not just let us do all the talking, because when we do the talking, people say, well, it's self-interest. and it goes up against us. So I see all these things being dismantled, and I just, it just pains my heart because I'm a United States citizen. This is my country as well, and so to see these things happen, it's pretty painful. But we need you to be vocal. We need you to be active and to be politically engaged and politically involved, because in the world of politics, politicians don't want you to be involved so they can make all the decisions by themselves. And so you need to take the initiative to say, no, I'm going to be involved. I'm interested in this. This impacts me, impacts my neighbor, and impacts my state, and impacts my country.
Going to, then I'm going to. So I think, I can't thank you all enough and for being here and everything that you said. John prompted the question that I think a lot of us think about and have been thinking about, but I think ultimately I have the privilege of standing up as the head of HR and the person who believes very wholeheartedly in the differences in the DEI initiatives. I've been doing HR for a long time. I'm 33 years, I've been doing it. And I have engaged from the front on diversity initiatives, not because they were popular, not when they weren't popular, not when they were popular again, then when they weren't popular again, and back and forth and back and forth. I do it because it is the right thing to do. Justice is a core value for me. And when I listen and think about what propels all of us to come together, the inherent kindness and connection that we have for people has always been what drives me. I am Jewish, and many of you have heard me say this. Those who know me well understand this. So when you think about persecution and you think about what it's like not to live or be given life based on your religion or any other difference for that matter, at a very young age, I said exactly what you're saying. I will always stand up for what is right, for what people don't understand. I will shine the light of education, which I know you feel the same way about, on those differences, and remove fear and stigma and advocate for those who may not advocate for themselves. So I do not care, we do not care one bit about what all the other stuff out there. I appreciate what you're saying. Here at Walser, we've always met people where they are and will continue to do it because it is the right thing to do. And it's the way that the Walsers and the leadership team that both John and I sit on feels about our employees. And that's what's really, really important. So, again, one small little voice in a sea of thousands, we all have. And then guess what? We're pretty loud when it comes to that. So I thank you for the opportunity. I would also love to end on something that I think is really incredibly uplifting, because we can all forge what we are from a differences perspective, potentially in a moment of pain, whether we fled, whether we escaped, whether we immigrated. And so as a Jew, I focus on that a lot because it isn't necessarily a great story in a lot of cases. But what I do with my grandparents as well, when they were alive, or when I think about my childhood and what my parents said to me, is that while pain is what you remember, right, it does help you, we're going to also celebrate some of the things that are really awesome and fun. And so I want to know, when you think about remembrance, there's a lot that we say in remembrance that's sad, tough, feels persecuted. What would you all, one word, one custom, one thing that's amazing or fun that brings the celebration of those differences to the forefront for us all, so we can remember to fight for good as well as against evil? So that's what I'd like to know. Give me one high five, one fun, important, impactful thing that matters.
No. In Hmong, that means whenever you see a person and you greet them, the first thing you ask them, oh, have you eaten? Please come and eat. And if I had one thing about our Hmong community, you all know this too. We love food. We always have food and we always eat, right, guys? So no more, yeah. So that is something beautiful to celebrate. That speaks to all of us. Anything else, guys? Food is me.
You know what? Okay. Since we're going on Hmong phrases, I like this theme. I'll say, in Hmong, we don't say goodbye. We say "Shinjin dua," which is "we'll see you again." And I love that because that connects. Again, I go back to that connects our shared history. We never say goodbye. We just "Shinjin dua."
You know, I've been on this like healing kick and my staff roll their eyes at me all the time. I always say, and this may not sound fun, but there are so many ways, but we all have to heal, right? We have to find whatever it is to heal because there's a lot of trauma we carry. And my little journey I'm trying to go on is how do I find those little joys again in my life? And that's part of my healing process. For me, I like cute little things. So it's like going to cute little boutiques and finding things. And that's the stuff that brings me joy and reminds me like I have to celebrate. I have to celebrate how amazing my community is. I have to celebrate myself. I have to celebrate all these amazing people. And that is part of our healing journey because I think we become so burdened by the trauma and the responsibility that we carry, and we forget that we deserve joy as well.
I would say thankful, 我照 in the Hmong word, because I think with being thankful, we've seen much worse. And coming from a war-torn country, we've seen much worse. And so each time something happened to me, I was like, oh, I've seen worse. And also be thankful that we are here in America. This is the greatest country in the world, as I mentioned earlier. And so the talents that I have, the opportunity that I get, I'm going to help rebuild this country and to make it much more stronger. So when I started the Center for Hmong Studies, one of the benefactors said, what do you hope to accomplish with the Center for Hmong Studies? And I said, I hope to build better Americans. Because the more you learn about other cultures, you learn more about yourself. And building better Americans. And but being thankful, I think is a key word.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And I know that we are over our time, but I'll make this very, very quick. Thank you. Thank you to our panelists for being here. And I'm gonna say this because I'm brief. H&D just happened a few weeks ago. It's still fresh in my mind. It's actually my very first H&D too. And that was made very super possible by Walser. So thank you. You know, all the speakers at H&D, they were sharing, you know, some of them shared their funny story. I wanted to share my funny story to close out today. So back when I was in education, right? You know, they just said, "Song, go and help that first grade Hmong dual language." I'm like, sure. So I got in there. The students were working on writing in Hmong. I'm like, okay. So one of the students, and the task was to write what you did yesterday. So the student asked me, "Hey, Sifu Hyung, how do I write that I went to the restaurant yesterday?" Okay, this is how you do it, right? So I was guiding him through it. I'm like, we're done. I was like, yeah, super simple. I got this, right? And then another teacher came in, and then he was like looking at the writing. He's like, huh. He asked the student, why did you go to the doctor? The student said, no, I went to the restaurant. Then the student looked right up at me and said, "Sifu Hyung, ก็ใครกูโชว์อยู่เก่งแน่." So if you don't know the Hmong language, it's tonal. So different tones, and the same word, but different tones means different things. So yeah, I felt really bad, but then for the next 2 months, Mei Li tutored me. It was after work. It was after work. Every like for the next 2 months, Mei Li just tutored me until I got my tones right. And when Mei Li, when we first started, I was like, Mei Li, I don't. They all sound the same. It's like they all sound the same, Mei Li. But I'm so grateful that I was able to get all the tones correct. So the funny part of the story is this though. So this past November at the St. Paul Hmong New Year celebration at the River Center, someone came up to me. We had a booth there. We were one of the sponsors too. And someone came up to me and said, "Hi, Sifu Hyung." I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "Do you remember me?" It's like, "Sorry, I don't remember. You know, you're like 6 feet tall now, you know." But he said, "It's me from first grade." I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's the student that I helped write the sentence wrong." So, and so I just want to say, you know, that everything that we do will always make an impact, no matter how little, or in my case, you know how wrong the spelling is. But
Thank you. Could I just say something real quick? Because this needs to be said, especially because you have your Walser leadership here. It means so much, truly, to have Walser in the community. Definitely, our Hmong National Development Conference could not have happened without you all, your support, your presence, the representation that was there, the Hmong New Year, all of our other community events that happen here. And I say this because it's not about the financial contributions. That helps. That helps all of us nonprofits. It does. But the true demonstration that you all want to be in community with our community, because I always say to folks that I work with, partner with, you have to meet us where we're at. You have to come and see how we live, work, and play. That is the only way you will understand how our community operates. And I also want to thank you all for the amazing investments you make into our Hmong American leaders and our Asian American leaders here. That representation is real. Even at my age, I'm a few years away from 50. I look at like all these amazing Hmong leaders and I'm like, I have more brothers and sisters to turn to for knowledge and resources. And that investment is huge. It means so much because it is that ripple effect, right? It's going to keep going out and ripple out even further. And so the leadership of Song and Reggie and all of you within the Asian Hmong Alliance, we love seeing you all out there. We're always together, right? And we always are like with Walser. But words cannot express what that means when we see you all out there with us and that we have folks from our own communities as part of your leadership team as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mainza. As we bring everything to a close, today we commemorate Hmong American Day at Walser. Although today may seem like a small event, it has made an impact that we're sure will remain with us for a long time. On behalf of the Asian Hmong Alliance, ERG, we'd again like to thank Andrew Walser and the Walser Automotive Group for supporting us in all that we do. And on behalf of us all, a very special thanks to Mainza, Mei Li, Li Pao, and Bua for coming today and sharing your time and your voices with us. We can't put into words how grateful we are for everyone that took the time out of their day to join us to commemorate and celebrate Hmong American Day. Thank you.